So verse 16 says, "But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh." This verse is such a wonderful promise for us as believers, both Jew and Gentile, in Yeshua. Amen? Amen. What is more, in my opinion, it is so practical and easy to understand that it is incomprehensible why more Christians, why more believers are not following its rich spiritual truth. Let's be honest, people. Most of us as believers, and I'm putting myself in this camp as the guilty as well, we simply do not avail ourselves of the power of the Spirit the way we ought to. We coast too often, right? The Spirit gives us this boost as we press in and we encounter breakthroughs in the Spirit, and then instead of continuing in our walk in the Spirit, what do? We kind of coast under our own power, not realizing that the Spirit is actually just kind of taking a side seat, or a back seat sometimes, to the actions in our lives. If we are to be obedient to God's ways and love our neighbor like Paul says, like we ought to, then we have to live by the Spirit so that we can allow God to empower us to subjugate our stubborn flesh. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. This is what we have to do. Paul has stated this very same principle elsewhere in his writings. Let's read about this idea of the flesh and the Spirit and our responsibility to one another in the book of Romans chapter 8, verses 12 through 14. This is such a wonderful passage. "So then, brothers, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die." Speaking to believers here, both Jews and Gentiles in Messiah, right? Paul goes on to say, if you live according to the flesh, you will die. You'll be devoured. Like he says earlier in the book of Galatians here. "But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God," Paul says in Romans there. All who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. That's Romans 8, 12 through 14 through the ESV. I say in my commentary, to live by the Spirit means to walk by the Spirit. They're synonymous terms. Live by the Spirit, walk by the Spirit. Be filled with the Spirit is the same concept of being saturated, being overrun or overempowered or overflowing with the Spirit. It's to be filled with the Spirit. Let's keep talking about. We're gonna talk more about Spirit filling below when we get to verse 18 in my commentary. We're gonna take a whole section and just talk about being filled with the Spirit.